Okay, we're recording live. Our guest today was the executive director of the Ancient Forest Alliance and the Western Wilderness Committee's Victoria chapter. Almost said Vancouver, Victoria chapter. In 2018, he founded the Endangered Ecosystem Alliance, working for science-based protection for all native ecosystems. Please welcome this powerhouse environmental conservationist, Ken Wu, and Celina Starnes, their operations and outreach director. So thank you. Actually, I'm just going to say one thing. If you like what we're doing, please like and share and also subscribe to our Impact podcast. This episode today is sponsored by the Ocean Legacy Foundation and True Beach, both helping stop the tide of trash in our oceans. And so, yeah, thank you both for so much for being here today. Really, really appreciate it, and really appreciate what you're doing. Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. And I understand that, so Ken, yeah. So I mean, our family have been supporters of the used to be Western Wilderness Committee, and then the Old Growth Alliance for 20 plus years. So, so you were involved in those organizations, for a while, I guess, were you?
Yeah, and they both sort of have difficult names. So it's Western Canada Wilderness Committee.
I know.
Horrible name. We say only a committee could have come up with that name. Went around the circle too many times, and then got shortened to just Wilderness Committee.
Right.
And then set up the Ancient Forest Alliance in 2010, and then 2018 we set up the Endangered Ecosystems Alliance. But there are distinctions. To the average person, sounds like just one giant swirl of nature advocacy stuff. But they talk about some of the nuances there.
Right. Yeah. So it's really interesting because I think I actually have a sticker on the back of my truck, which is the Ancient Forest Alliance. I think I still have it there. Yeah.
So the West Coast does in southern BC.
It does, yeah. Looks like Devin popped back on here. It looks like you're feeling a little bit better. Yeah.
Yeah, I had to, disappear for a second.
Yeah.
A lot better now.
Yeah. Oh, good stuff. Yeah. We're recording there, so it's all good.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Sorry about that, guys. Hello.
Yeah, no, it's good. So your organization there. So what now? So I know you started this back in, was it 2018, was it?
Yeah, so we're just pretty brand spanking new, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And just over 3 years ago. And we've just hit our stride now. It took a while, but that's the way it always is. I've set up, organizations before. It takes normally took about 5 years to really become larger with staff and the ability to run real campaigns in a powerful way. I think we're about to hit that point now because of we got our charitable status last November, so it actually increased our resources.
Yeah, and you guys are doing something different. You guys are doing something different than the other two that you were with before, right? You're actually working really closely. Well, not that they're not, but with Indigenous organizations as well. Is that right? How are you different from those other two organizations that you worked with before?
Well, there's quite a few differences. So the Endangered Ecosystems Alliance doesn't focus just on old growth in British Columbia, like the Ancient Forest Alliance does, where our goal is to protect the diversity of ecosystems across the country. Now, of course, I've spent over 30 years working to protect old growth forests in BC. We've hit a critical juncture, so I'm Celina and I are going to work hard to help push this campaign over the top. We're so close, but some of the differences besides the diversity of ecosystems across and nationwide is that we're also focused on building conservation financing options for land embedded communities. So
I saw that, yeah.
That basically means the reality is essentially that, and Celina is doing a lot of the outreach as well for a lot of our work, but it's to help bring in key financing, both leveraging government funding and also through our partner, the Nature-Based Solutions Foundation, another organization that we just set up.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, great.
Yeah, key funding for economic alternatives for example, First Nations who determine whether or not old growth forests get protected so that they can build alternative economies based on tourism, clean energy, non-timber forest products like wild mushrooms, sustainable seafood.
Okay.
And we're also focused on broadening the environmental movement beyond environmentalists, because we're going to lose if we only focus. And that's what Celina's been doing, is the outreach to.
Okay, I love it. That's great. Yeah. Well, actually, I'd like to ask you. But before I ask you the next question, I forgot something that we do on every show, and it's our 2 truths and a lie. So I thought you might think, oh shoot, we looks like we got away with that, but no, we're gonna drag you in that. Now Devin's back on here, so now we can have some fun with you a little bit. So let's do that, and then I'll get back to my next question, if that's okay. All right, so Dev, I've got a couple of truths and a lie here on Ken. Okay, so you ready? How you feeling there, Dev? Good.
Sure, feeling good, man. Yeah.
Okay, number 1, I lived in Europe through a formative period in my development of activism. Okay, so lived in Europe. Yeah, okay, that seems plausible for sure. Yeah. Okay, number 2, my primary interest is saving old growth forests, and I got stuck up an old growth tree for 3 days during a protest. Well, yeah. Okay. Number 3, I grew up in many ecosystems across Canada and became a fanatic for the country's diversity of ecosystems. Yeah, I mean, we've got such a massive variety of ecosystems, and it's hard. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. And the last one here, I live in Victoria in the basement of the Robert Bateman Gallery. They're having a chuckle, I can see.
That's where I am right now.
That's where you are right now. Yeah. got your painting smock on there, I see.
I am Robert Bateman, in fact.
So Dev, what are you thinking? What do you think is possible? Maybe 1 or 2 lies in there.
Yeah, they all sound pretty legit. I mean, that last one, maybe. Let's go with the first one and the last one. We'll go with
the first one. So lived in Europe through his kind of formative period of developing into an activist. Okay, and the Robert Bateman Gallery. I think, I think number 1 as well. I think number 1, you didn't live in Europe. But I think you're living in Robert Bateman's basement or in the gallery. I don't know.
You had to take down all the pictures.
That's a funny one. That's right. Some expensive pictures. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Ken. Which is the? You can add some spice to some of this too, if you like. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it sounds a bit sketchy to be stuck in someone's basement. I don't think Robert Bateman's that kind of guy, but it's the first. The first one is more realistic.
Oh, so that is the one. Is that right?
Yeah. It was definitely an interesting thing when you see the diversity of cultures and politics and societies. Europe is phenomenal, and the southern countries are pretty different than the northern countries. Are similar to Canada, I find, like Germany, Holland, Scandinavia, UK share a lot of similarities to the northern Anglosphere. But once you get to France, Spain, Italy, the southern, then it starts to become more spicy and crazy and alien and interesting.
Right.
And delicious.
Yeah. Delicious, that's true. Yeah.
And delicious, yeah, especially Spain, yeah. Yeah, that is a good point there. Yeah, I guess with with activism and things, it's a little bit more spicy. Maybe more of the Latin based. I don't know, but that's great. It's funny that you said that Europe. Actually, my wife and I are heading to Scotland in April to do a trek, an 8-day trek in kind of northern Scotland. You go from pub to pub to pub, but you trek about 25K a day, and then you stop, and then you carry on to the next one. And there, the ecosystem up there is, yeah, I'm really, really excited to trek through there and take my camera. And
yeah, I spent some time up there as well in Banff.
Did you? Yeah.
The original Banff, not the.
The original. There's an original. I didn't know there was an original Banff over there. Was that?
Yeah, they're a bit smaller.
I had no. I worked in the Banff in Alberta here for a while, but I didn't know that. Really?
Yeah, north of Aberdeen. But yeah, I spent a lot of time in Europe, in Scotland and France, those 2 areas in particular. And I find it, at least my perspective from traveling and living in different places, totally broadens your thinking. It's really when I was in France, I started to realize, you know what? look how the diversity of different cultures, and if you were to build a movement here, you would have to be able to see it from their perspective, and to be able to, make sure your messaging, your approach resonates. And coming back to Canada, I started realizing that you've got big differences in the working class, in the business community, in the religious community, and the environmental movement, so that it's not in our own silo of tree hugging, protest at kombucha, drinking, CBC listening, bongo playing. Very particular. We're going to have to see things from other perspectives. But Europe did that for me. It helped me to start to realize, because I was sort of an alien. It's like I'm in rural France and rural Normandy, and I'm always thinking about movements. So I thought, how would you but it gave me some, insight in coming back to Canada after that.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because when I was young, I mean, well, not young, but throughout my whole life, I'm turning 60 next month. I mean, since I was 17, I worked all over the world. I was in Venezuela when I was like 18, right out of high school for, I was down there for like 6 months. And then I was in Brazil. I was in Brazil. I was in Indonesia. And I really, really started to understand, like yourself, and appreciate the different ecosystems and the different, movements, and the contamination. I was mostly on the contamination because I was on the oil spill response and planning side back then, because I was mapping, doing sensitivity mapping in about 9 different countries I was living. And we would map the coastline with old nautical maps, and then we would digitize them, and we'd layer with all the environmental sensitivities over the top. But it was the beginning of GIS type mapping, right? That's what we were doing. But it really opened my eyes. When I came back here, I was like, oh my gosh, like, yes. Like I mentioned earlier, that my wife and I, on our honeymoon, we went to Haida Gwaii, and we called it the Queen Charlotte Islands, and now it's called back to Haida Gwaii, and it was absolutely stunningly beautiful, so remote. But behind a facade of trees, the logging operations that were going on there, and the slash burning was just, it was mind-boggling. And I realized that it wasn't just in these other countries like Venezuela and Brazil, where they were deforesting the Amazon in Brazil, but it was actually going on here in my own backyard. And that's why I have this passion for doing whatever we can, and then and sharing stories like what you guys are doing, which is incredible, and incredible stuff. And so you mentioned something earlier, and you talk about nature-based solutions. So what are nature-based solutions? I don't quite understand.
That's all the rage these days, right? In the last years in particular. But essentially what happened is, a lot of the movement to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to meet our climate targets has been focused on industry and transportation, and retrofitting buildings. So finding ways to reduce the actual emissions. But scientists have done an analysis in the last several years, starting around 2016, 17, it got more prominent, that there's actually no way. We've left it so bloody long to reduce greenhouse gas emissions that we can't meet our climate targets of 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels, unless we draw down enough carbon. And the best carbon capture and sequestration device around is called a tree. It's called nature. And basically protection
especially of nature. Especially old growth trees, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge, in terms of accumulation, that's accumulated over hundreds of thousands of years. So it's originated as essentially a means to, as a solution to protect nature, to meet our climate targets, but also obviously it's to avert the extinction crisis. And now what we're trying to point out is that for the economy, protecting native ecosystems is a huge boost to regional economies when you get national and provincial parks and protected areas, and for our health. So all the science is showing that it's kind of crazy stuff, but like, when I didn't even know this till like a couple of years ago, trees emit a compound called phytoncides that when we breathe them in, it actually produces, stimulates our bodies to produce NK cells, immune cells that hive out virus-infected cells and cancerous cells from our bodies. But nature is vital for our health. So nature-based solutions for health, for the economy, for the extinction crisis, for the climate crisis, nature is the remedy for so many of the ailments of industrial civilization.
Right. And then you mentioned something about Drawdown. So does that have something to do with, what's his name? The book called Drawdown. Hawken, what's his name? Hawken, not Stephen Hawken.
Yeah, Paul.
Paul Hawken again, Stephen Hawken, Paul Hawken. Yeah, his book Drawdown too, which is basically, I think, doing exactly what you're just talking about, right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I kind of got tuned into through George Monbiot and the little Greta Thunberg.
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
they started, bringing that in quite a bit about 2 years ago, and so I'm like, that they're speaking my language. I definitely, I
But
don't want to. Yeah.
you know what I really noticed? I mean, going flashing back to, like, say when my wife and I got married in 1989, is we drove through British Columbia up north, up to Prince Rupert, and then across to Haida Gwaii, right? But then driving through back in 1989, all the little towns that we would stop off, they were very industrialized. Like they had remember the beehive burners with the smoke coming up, burning all the residue from the forest industry and the logging and the slash burning. It was just like it was kind of like Armageddon driving up through the province back in the late 80s. And now I went with Devin and our whole family. A buddy of mine runs a fishing business out of north of Smithers in Kispiox. And so we did the same drive that we did in 1989 up there, and it's totally changing. You hit towns like Smithers and what. They're ecotourism based. They've kind of flipped, and you're just looking at them and go, this is incredible how, before people are like, our jobs, I've been doing this for 8 generations. We've been loggers, and 10 generations, we don't know what to do if the logging industry or the mining industry goes. But now they slowly change over to ecotourism, and people are thriving again. And it's just that, I think it's a change of that mindset. And it's really nice to, like, it's incredible to see. They're beautiful places to go through and hang out and spend some time. And they're all running these sustainable businesses. So we can do it. We can totally do it. It's just, I think it's just that changing of that, our old mindset, the ways that we, this is the way it's always been. This is the way it's always going to be. No, I don't really agree with that. Yeah.
And it's not just tourism, because that's the thing that comes to mind for a lot of people. But
sure.
The analysis shows, for example, the recent analysis by our colleagues at the Ancient Forest Alliance had commissioned that showed that in Port Renfrew, which is now the tall trees capital of Canada, it's not just ecotourism, but the real estate industry in town is totally boomed because of all the people coming in to see old growth forests. You've got all through, like, when you get in that whole corridor from Victoria up to Port Renfrew, when you've got Avatar Grove and amazing old growth forests, places people can go, you also attract an educated, skilled labor base, people who want to live in places that have amazing places they can recreate in and spend time in, and that attracts other industries. Like, apparently more than tourism now, high tech is way bigger in Victoria than tourism.
Yeah.
And it's because it's an awesome area with all the parks and protected areas and nature, and without the old growth forest, Vancouver Island would be just another place. But it's special because of
people are coming for the lifestyle, and they see themselves as outdoorsy and living this lifestyle. And where can I do that best? Oh my gosh, these charismatic rainforests that
I know,
that I want to be a part of and be close to and recreate in. And then here they are, and like filling up Victoria, and all these opportunities for employers to have all this development in the high tech sector. It's like this whole other industry that's just blossoming in Vancouver and Victoria.
Yeah, I mean, I know that we've talked about, because we have people here talking about health and whatnot. And I mean, Devin's mom is Japanese, from a small, tiny Japanese village in Japan. And in Japan, they call it tree bathing, which you probably know, is that it's just spending that time in nature. And it actually is really uber good for us. And I think a lot of us have probably found that out during COVID, where we've gone outside a little bit more. The hiking trails have been packed with people and baby carriers hiking through the bush and just spending time out in nature. And I think that was almost kind of a callback for us, hey, let's get back a little bit back to nature. And it has that healing power for us. So therefore, like you said, people moving to Victoria to be in these environments, to live in these environments for the, these, the healing power. But I guess there's one little thing that a good friend of ours, Lynn Twist, that is a founder of the Pachamama Alliance, that works with the indigenous tribes of the Amazon to help protect the Amazon and their way of life, etc. She mentioned a few years ago that, where's my note here? This was in 2010. This is in 2010. She told me that in 1987 was the year when humanity started eating into the planet's capital and using more resources than planet Earth could regenerate. So that was in 2010 when she mentioned that to me. And in 1987 was the kind of that tipping point year, according to some of the studies that were done. So how do you guys feel things are moving now? Now we're 2022. Have we kind of, is it still kind of going that way, or are we kind of dragging it back? Are we kind of bringing the needle back to where it's more, where Mother Earth can regenerate itself?
Well, I think that in a good deal of the Western world, consciousness has expanded significantly and definitely with the younger generations, but some of the older generations too. But the question is whether it's going fast enough and is being translated into policy. We do have the biggest opportunities right now. Coming up in April is the UN Biodiversity Conference, the Convention on Biological Diversities Conference in Kunming, China, where all nation states except for the US will be negotiating 30% by 2030 protected areas target. Canada's already adopted that target, made an interim target of 25% by 2025.
2025, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's a tremendous push to expand the protected areas system. Now, COVID's taken the wind out of the sails, and now this whole freedom convoy thing is also being dominating. But
the news,
but in the next few months, I think as Omicron is diminishing and the weather gets better, there starts to become sort of a bounce back in the economy. I think there's going to be a big focus back on environmental issues, and it's our chance. As long as the provinces get on board, we got to get the provinces on board to expand the protected area system.
And so right now, so what are we at? Like, I think I read something like we're at 12% now, and then by 2025, Canada's pledging 25%. So that's a big chunk. That's a huge chunk between now and 2025.
Yeah, in basically about 4 years, we got to double the protected area system when previously over 150 years. So it's ambitious. It ain't going to happen, by the way, if the provinces don't get on board. So that's the big issue, is that except for Quebec, which is where I live, actually, where the government's competing with the federal government on a lot of levels. And this is a good thing, good competition here. They've expanded protected areas. The rest of the country is being laggards, and we've got to bear down on the provinces to commit.
Because I heard the feds and the provinces are completely different. Like if the feds will say, okay, we'll put aside this, but the provincial governments can kind of do their own thing. Is that right? I don't quite understand that.
Well, it doesn't happen unless the provinces are on board, because land use is determined by the provinces, but also in British Columbia in particular by First Nations. And so that's the big difference. Is the only way we're going to get expanded protected areas in British Columbia on the unceded territories of First Nations and protection of old growth forests is if First Nations support protection. And that's going to happen on a systematic large scale only if First Nations have an economic alternative, like all peoples, to the old growth timber dependency that exists right now. Successive BC governments have essentially fostered an old growth logging dependency in First Nations communities across most of the province. And the way in Haida Gwaii and in the Great Bear Rainforest, the central and north coast, that large scale old growth protection happened was by conservation groups bringing in the case of the Great Bear and Haida Gwaii, 60 million, and for getting the provincial and federal governments to bring in 30 million each, so 120 million, to then support ecotourism, sustainable seafood, potentially clean energy, non-timber forest products industries, as well as carbon offsets, have helped to expand the protected area system on a big scale on the central and north coast. So what Celina and I are working on right now is to bring, it's called conservation financing, bring conservation financing options to interested First Nations across BC right now, along with outreach to engage non-traditional allies, the business community, which Celina is being focused on.
Okay, that's really interesting. Yeah, so that is something different, and that could really definitely make a big move and really help out here. Yeah. Yeah. I was going to ask you. So I know that and I don't know if you. I'm sure you probably do know about this. That so in 2008 in Ecuador, it was the first nation to grant nature constitutional rights. Right. So actually, rights of nature. Nature has rights. Um, does Canada have anything in the works to do anything like that? Have you heard of anything? Yeah.
Not as comprehensive as nearly
As
as
Ecuador.
comprehensive as that. I know that Suzuki
Yeah.
Foundation sort of been pushing that
Yeah.
concept. The most important thing, of course, that if you really want to recognize the rights of nature,
Yeah.
is to protect ecosystems. And
Yeah.
so, as a de facto way, the commitment to expand the protected area system is essentially, would be translating that principle on the ground. The problem is that there's a pressure release valve for governments that don't want to protect the areas under contention with big industry, and it's basically move all the protected areas, concentrate them in the Alpine and Arctic, where there's no tree logging and no trees and no agriculture and very few people.
Right.
So those are native ecosystems. I'm glad they're being protected,
Yeah.
but what they're doing is they're avoiding the old growth forests of southern British Columbia and the Carolinian forests of the southern Ontario, where the people with the southern prairie ecosystems, where farming and grazing. So it's trying to avoid. Same as like in Australia, I saw a news headline a little while ago: biggest protected area on Earth established. I'm like, wow, amazing. And I was thinking about where's that? Tasmania in the rainforest or down in the New South Wales? It's all the whole middle of the outback.
The outback, yeah.
So there's always, and same as like there was a big glacier protected a while ago. They made, there's a whole, basically governments are looking to figure out ways to increase the percentage without actually changing anything on the ground in terms of what industry does.
Right. Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of like wanting your cake and eating it too, right? Like you can get this huge swath, but it's not contentious to put it away for protection. So
change the destruction of nature, because there was nothing as a whole in a lot of those areas going to happen. They were relatively minor compared to heavy logging or heavy agriculturalization or urban development, or
it's not the difficult choice, but the right choice, and that's what we're trying to help them make.
Not these massive biodiverse areas. It's these areas that you're just wow. So what do you think is the greatest opportunity that we have here to kind of scale up this protection of these real of these areas that really need protection? So what do you think is our
well, the two things that I've mentioned, I believe that basically First Nations need economic alternatives, and then the champions within First Nations communities will have a stronger hand within their communities to get Indigenous protected areas and old growth protection initiatives here in British Columbia. So that's one thing, is to support First Nations in their bid, and including economically, not just the words and the performative allyship you see among a lot of progressives. It's to actually change the outcome with major funding to support protected areas in First Nations. And the second is the environmental movement's a total echo chamber. The average environmentalist thinks basically engages other environmentalists, and I'm guilty of that as a younger activist. But you start to realize, like, a lot of British Columbia is potentially Trump country as well, the same as Canada. I mean, we've seen it in the last couple of weeks. If you see the working class to the far right, or if you decide that you're just not going to engage businesses, and you're not going to think about the economy and figure out a way for people to have revenues and jobs, you just want to talk about, protest about just your environmental issue. That's what most environmental groups essentially do. That is essentially keeping us small and narrow and unable to change the outcome. So it's the large scale engagement of non-traditional allies. We call them non-traditional allies because they're not normally part of the scene, but that's the game changer, along with supporting economically First Nations sustainable economies linked to protecting ecosystems. So businesses, unions, faith groups, outdoor rec groups, a diversity of non-traditional allies. So that's so Celina's being up our.
I saw what Celina was doing a few months ago. Is I think we signed up our company AquaGuard Slow Response
Thank
as
you
one of
again.
your supporters there. So you're going out to businesses, local businesses or provincial businesses to to become aware and then sign up, and which I thought that was great. I saw that because I haven't really seen that come through in many of the other ones. They've all been personal, knock at your door, hey, do you want to give me $25? Where this is like your business, and like, huh. Interesting. There's something that that I've said in some other of our podcasts with Devin here is that so as a business owner here in North Vancouver, I've been to various of our politician talks, right? And we were fortunate that Jonathan Wilkinson was the Minister of Environment federally, and he's also our MP here in North Van. So I would go to some of his talks on the environment and what they were doing. And something that I really did notice, I was probably one or two business owners that were there out of probably 200, 300 people. And most of the people there were nothing against retirees, because I'm probably getting closer to that age now, but it's mostly retirees talking about, things. And I bring this up all the time, dog poop on the sidewalk or whatever it is. I hate dog poop on the sidewalk, but they were the poor guy standing up there having to answer questions, like that, because he is the local MP. And there was 5 UBC students sitting behind me out of everybody, and they asked a few questions. And then Jonathan, he made a really good point. He said, guys, if you really want to make change, please help, and run for your local office, run for your local government, or get involved in politics. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I think he's right, because protesting is one thing. I think protesting is right. You got to protest, you got to get out there, but standing out there with a placard and whatever, people show up for an hour and they go back to their regular lives, right? They just kind of, I'm going to go protest for an hour and then it's easy. But to actually get involved, if you're really, really passionate, is to get involved in your local governments to make change. And then, and I think that, that is really tough. And it's a really tough call for citizens to get involved. I mean, I bet if we took a poll of all of us, I'd be like, geez, I don't know. I don't think I could do it. And it's a really tough thing to do. And to really make change is to get involved in the grassroots levels, the government levels, to make this change. And you just don't see it. So
I believe
that's just my observation.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like it's not our role, by the way, in the nonprofits, but at some point you need to get your hand on the steering wheel and not just lobbying from the back seat on where to turn.
Yeah, that's right. Backseat driver. That's so true. That's so true. Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. Yeah. How do you see that in your generation there, Dev? Do you see
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think it's just like, and I've kind of said this before, I think it's just like the access to pretty much like infinite knowledge at your fingertips from such a young age. It's like we kind of have to, like the younger generations, it's like you kind of have to be switched on to this stuff, right? It's like it's so in your face and it's here. And if you're not, you're just kind of being ignorant to it. But yeah, I think it's these little guys have a lot of good and they have a lot of bad in them, right? So
right.
Depends on what you do with them that matters, I guess.
Tiny computer in your pocket.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
We don't have to
it's a big like hurdle to jump, right? Like to go from I'm going to school every day and I'm studying, and now I'm trying to get my foothold into my career, and now maybe I'm an entrepreneur, and maybe I'm a single mom. I'm not, but but it's like a big ask of people in general to get on board like that and to put their hand on the steering wheel.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
I said, I don't think I don't think, even at my age now, I'm like, I just see what happens to these guys, and it's a tough grind. It's a tough grind.
Yeah, and if we can help facilitate that, my role specifically, because often when I get on the phone with some of these businesses, I'm blown away. Like I'll give a call to, I think the funniest one I had was this dent repair shop for cars. And I get on the phone with them and I said, hey, are you interested in signing this resolution? He's like, absolutely. I take my family out in the woods as often as I can in the summer to go camping. I've seen the devastation. I've been out there and I've gone to camping places and returned to them, and now they're gone. What can I sign? What can I do? Can I provide a quote for a press release? How can I help? So this fella, this entrepreneur, he wants to put his hand on the steering wheel. He just doesn't know where it is. So
Yeah,
I'm
good
helping him
point.
out, facilitating him to be able to do that. So that's just one example, but we've got architecture firms, we've got design firms, outreach and marketing companies that are all very excited. They're like, how do I help? Where can I help? So folks are busy. I don't want to wag my finger at anyone saying you should be an environmentalist and you should speak out. Like their lives are very busy, but we're helping them do it.
Yeah. I mean, I like what you're doing there, because over the generations, the word environmentalist has become almost sometimes it's a little bit tainted. It's like, oh, he's a tree hugger. And then the door shuts. But like what you're explaining there is like, well, I think everybody likes to go out and into nature and likes to walk, in the trees, and then go camping with their kids and see their kids, take them fishing or whatever it is. And it's kind of a no-brainer. And to get people, these people on board. And it's like you said, it's non-traditional, like these businesses and these people that they're, like you said, they're so busy in their day-to-day stuff. They really don't know where to turn. I'm sure everybody wants to help. Everybody wants to help in some sort of way. They just don't know how. I mean, I've been like
How
that.
do
I
I
was like
crack
that for
into this? I want to do something.
and you're helping them. You're helping them by saying, hey, it's very simple, here you go. So I think that's fantastic. Yeah.
There's different levels of engagement, right? But you definitely got to start with, before you chain yourself to a tree or run for office.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Sign a petition first, or slideshow before you get
That's right.
And levels of engagement.
Yeah,
for sure.
and everything is baby steps. I know. I was down in San Diego with my entrepreneurs organization group like 20 years ago, and I was having lunch at the Coronado Hotel with my buddy Dave Ash, and he was starting to do a lot of philanthropy work, all over the Vancouver East Side, and helping and doing all this incredible stuff. And I looked at him like, you're running a business, you got 3 little kids, and we had 3 little kids too. It's like, how do you get the time to do it? And he just said, Nigel, stop right there. It's not that difficult. Just take that first tiny little step. And I'm like, well, what is that? He says, oh, you see a homeless person, just have a chat with them for 2 minutes, or give them $2, $3. Don't ask where it's going. Just, and he says, it'll just all make sense after that. Just take everything as baby steps. And he was so right. And to this day, I look back at that conversation, and that really affected my whole trajectory of my whole life. And it was very simple. And it was like what you're saying is just that little, how about a little testimonial? How about just a little 3-line testimonial? And then it gets into your brain like, oh, and then it grows pretty fast after that once you start getting involved. So yeah, I think.
And I'm delighted. I think, Ken, you told. Do you have to go?
Guys, I'm gonna let Celina I just gotta plug this in. It'll wink out in about 1 minute here. I'll be back in 30 seconds.
No worries.
Yeah. So I was chatting with a friend where we were saying, how are you so positive? How are you so, like, I watch the news, like climate change seems pretty grim. It's like, well, 2 things. Nature's really resilient. You just have to give it space to grow back, and it will. It's going to bounce back. So that kind of nucleus of hope is always there and just waiting, right? And then that's way bigger than I am.
Yeah.
And then the other piece for me, when I wasn't working in this field, when I wasn't dedicating any time to it at all, it felt desperate, and it felt like worrisome, and nothing's happening. And then as I started taking those steps, I got more and more feedback. Changes started to happen. Things became positive, and it grew, and the momentum grew in me, and the hope and the feeling of agency that I could change the outcome.
Yes.
So as I engage with more folks, and the more folks that come in and become excited about this movement, that it's just multiplying, and it's a lot of positivity around it.
Yeah, I had a similar, like I was just in Peru. I was just in Peru for 3 weeks with my wife, and we were trekking all over the north with a good friend of ours, Jamie Alvarez Acosta. He's a curandero, or a wisdom keeper, Andean wisdom keeper, passes down through the generations all the wisdom from millennia back. And I was having a hard time with the planet and with the degradation of everything on our planet. And he said, Nigel, just hang on a second here. He said, the planet will be fine. No matter what happens to the planet, 1 million years from now, it will regenerate in some form. We may not be there. That's the thing. He says it's us, it's our mindset. If humans want to be part of that, we have to change our mindset to coexist with our planet, and and live a sustainable life and help. The planet will be fine. A million years, it'll pop up some other way, but we probably won't be here unless we change our mindset. And I sat back, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's right. It's us. It's us. We have to change the way we do things. We have to. And Lynn, our good friend Lynn Twist, said to me a long time ago too. Said, we need to change the dream of the modern world, because the modern world's dream is consumption, and bigger. Yeah.
Yeah, and it would be such a we'll wink out of existence if we don't change our ways.
If we don't smarten up, yeah.
If we don't smarten up.
Yeah.
And it's so heartbreaking to me to lose all these other critters and ecosystems and organisms, like these trees, 2,000-year-old trees. They were just sprouting when Jesus walked the earth.
That's right. Exactly.
Sprouting out of the ground. And oh wow, I can do something to help keep that tree around. Like the legacy of this one organism's existence. Holy smokes. Totally, I'm gonna help that ecosystem survive,
Yeah.
I believe like a big part of parts of the environmental movement, people go through a burnout phase, and a lot of it is linked to a mindset around being against things. You got to be, of course, you've got to be against destructive things, but there's a matter of emphasis. I think we need to focus more on what we're in favor of, and the beauty of the world that we stand to lose. Focus more on the amazingness of Earth, and what are the solutions and the benefits from protecting areas from developing a sustainable economy, as opposed to just, this sucks, that sucks, that's horrible. Like, it's not very,
the finger waving. You definitely move away from finger waving.
Yeah. I'm really, super positive about the younger generations, like Devon's and the people that are younger, because they do have the ability to connect. I mean, if we do use the phone for good and bad, but there's a lot of good, and there's a lot of good information that can get shared. And they're way more like your generation, Dev, is way more switched on than my generation ever was, like 100 times.
Well, because you had to go to the library and find a book to read about stuff like this, right? Every single book that you've ever seen on your phone. It's like just getting your foot in the door. So actually, that's my question for you guys. It's like, how did you guys first start this? Like, how did you get your foot in the door, and why are you guys so driven to save the environment?
Well, for a big part of it for me was nature documentaries. Now, people are not, watching TV in the same way, but on even those little nature clips. But you got the crazy thing is you got the craziest things you can see now on the because there's phones everywhere, so you can capture the weasel riding on the back of the eagle flying away or whatever that was. But I think it's spending time in nature. There's still no surrogate. The phone is not a surrogate for actually. No. We got to get the generations out into the woods, and then politicizing it. So it was through my high school environment club and having getting more and more engaged, especially university. When I went to UBC in the 1990s, then there was a huge protest movements for ancient forests, and then moving from a participant into becoming an organizer. But it's the deep love of native ecosystems and nature, and it's a biophilia that pervades most people. Like most people have from the earliest age. If you see a giant, semi-amphibious pachyderm hippo, it's like, what the hell is that? Like, it's an amazing on Earth. All the giant whale sharks with their,
I know.
Trees.
And like you said, the documentary is about, is it David or I get them mixed up, David or Richard Attenborough, the two. Those are unbelievable. I mean, I know Devon hated going to school, but he would be sitting for hours and hours and hours watching those. Remember those documentaries? And he still cranks them out, and he's 90 something years old. Yeah, incredible. And it's really opened our eyes. And you go way back to I used to watch Jacques Cousteau because I used to be into the oceans, and I still am. It's incredible stuff. So I guess we should probably wrap her up here in a second or two. So any other little questions or comments or anything, Devon or Ken, Celina, you guys have there?
I got actually one more question. Let's go with So like through all of your years of like getting to where you are now, can you give me like 2 or 3 points of knowledge that you've acquired over the years that you would share with a younger version of yourself? Let's say that version of like the kid in high school that was driven to go save the environment. What would be your 3 points of wisdom that you would share with him or her?
Yeah, I would say, well, there's several key things, but one of them is to engage people who are different than you, see it from their perspectives, but you work to move people from where they're at as opposed to from where you're at for your cause. Another one is scale up. The average environmentalist is actually it's too small and too narrow, and to get political too. You do have to deal with laws and regulations. The personal and lifestyle reform, where you just do your own recycling and compost your banana peels. This world will burn unless we actually scale up and deal with the issues on a significant scale, and get political. And then a third one, it would be there's no surrogate. There's no replacement from getting people actually to see nature. Those
yes, that's so true. Yeah. Wow, that's great. Celina, you got a couple little points there?
Yeah, it's yeah, I worry a lot. Ken mentioned that the single individual making a difference, and that one's a big one for me, right? If because for a while I did that too, right? I recycled every little scrap of plastic I could find, and then I thought, oh gosh, well, if it's just me doing it, how much of an impact is this having? And then this is a while ago, I worked at Metro Vancouver in the regional district here in the southern part of British Columbia. Yeah. And I was learning about laws. I was learning about land acquisition plans that they had. I was learning about restoring ecosystems that are just covered with invasive plants. I said, holy smokes, when those folks got together and made a regional district, they had a huge impact on the outcomes. And now I'm a part of that back then when I worked there. Yes. So that really kind of tipped me into it. Oh my goodness, if Ken and I and the rest of the team, we could really work to influence policies, land acquisition, making new parks, that has this huge impact. Yeah. Way bigger than that banana peel that I made sure to get in the compost this morning. I mean, it's still good. Like, still do that.
Way bigger than you'll ever see. My analogy is I had a bit of an epiphany. Devin knows it, down in Guatemala in the rainforest with a bunch of cutter ants. I was sitting there and I was having a hard time because I was getting involved in all these environmental and social causes all over the planet. And I'm like, do I really have a difference? Like, I was really just burned out. And I looked down and I saw these cutter ants. And I'm like, hang on a second. You're one of those you're carrying your little tiny piece to wherever it is. And all of the other guys, like you said, we do make a difference. We may not see the other people. We may not see the people in the UK or in wherever they are in Thailand, but everybody makes a difference. We're all those little cutter ants carrying our little piece. And it just went, that's it, Nigel. You don't have to worry about that anymore. You actually do make a difference. So thank you so much for sharing that. That's awesome. That's awesome. And I guess we'll wrap it up on that. Hey, Dev.
Yeah, everybody, thank you so much for stopping by. We're going to wrap it up with that. If you guys would like to know more about Ken and Celina, we'll put everything in the link of the description of the video. I don't know if you mentioned our sponsors today, Ocean Legacy Foundation and True Beach. Guys, thank you so much for stopping by. And of course, thank you, Ken. Thank you, Celina, for coming on the show today. And we'll have to have you back some point.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. This was just fantastic.